Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome to today's webinar. My name is Jared Hornsby, and I'm here today to help answer any general or technical questions that you may have. But before we get started, I'd like to welcome you to today's webinar, Peak E-Commerce, Composable Commerce's Impact on High Traffic Moments. Here's today's timing breakdown. These numbers are just rough, so please don't hold us to these. At any point during today's webinar, if you have a question, please do not hesitate to submit using the Ask a Question tab at the bottom of your screen. You can also chat with your fellow attendees by clicking the audience chat. That's also at the bottom of your screen. Please let us know where you're coming in from. Here's a little bit about us over at CMSWire. We were founded in the year 2003, and we cover the primary topics that you see here on this slide. You can read more of our great content and register for upcoming conferences and webinars, all by visiting www.cmswire.com. I'd like to thank today's sponsor, Contentstack. The Composable DXP leader empowers marketers and developers to deliver composable digital experiences at the speed of their imagination, and you can learn more about them at contentstack.com. Over from the Contentstack side, we have Marina Russinow, the Senior Content Marketing Manager, and Greg Kilstrom, one of our consultants, to speak a little bit more about our topic today. Marina, Greg, take it away.
Great. Thank you so much for the intro there. As we just were speaking about, Jared mentioned today we're here to talk about peak e-commerce, composable commerce's impact on high traffic moments. We'll kick us off with our intros. I'll begin by introducing myself. My name is Marina Russinow. I'm the Senior Solutions Marketing Manager here at Contentstack. I've worked for companies big and small with over a decade of experience in product and solutions marketing with a focus on customer retention and loyalty. And I'll pass the mic here to Greg for a quick introduction.
Great. Happy to be here. My name is Greg Kilstrom. I'm a consultant and advisor for Fortune 500 companies. I work with in several areas, but a lot in the MarTech infrastructure strategy and operations space. So I've worked with, had the pleasure of being able to work with some of the world's top brands. I also teach for the Association of National Advertisers. I've written a few books on the topic, and I do plenty of writing, including some writing for CMSWire as well. So looking forward to talking about this stuff today.
Glad to have you here, Greg. Thank you. Yeah. I'll start with a quick review of our agenda for the day. We're going to go into understanding composable commerce, and then we'll talk about some of the challenges around these peak traffic moments that we're here to talk about today. We'll talk about the role of the composable DXP, and then we'll get into Black Friday and beyond, how to handle these future peak moments. And then we'll review some key considerations and takeaways, followed by a Q&A session. So without further ado, we'll get right into it. E-commerce today definitely has its challenges when speaking to these peak traffic moments like Black Friday. Current businesses are struggling with their inflexible monolithic architectures, which ultimately hinder their ability to adapt to changing market demands and really hinder their ability to innovate quickly. The lack of customization and the ability to personalize quickly really hinders the ability to deliver those next level digital experiences and ultimately result in highly generic user journeys, which then really force customers to not want to come back. And then we have the challenge of inflexible architectures, which lead to bottlenecks, slower page load times, bad checkout experiences, and even website crashes, which impact the customer satisfaction and a company's bottom line. So the way that we define composable commerce today, it's omnichannel in nature, right? It's modular. That is the whole point, is being able to mix and match the components that you need to work best for your business. It uses digital interaction as its primary mechanism for customer engagement, and it really gives businesses the scalability and freedom to build for their specific needs. And it's truly central to the future of any e-commerce operation. I will pass the mic to Greg, because here we have what we call the face punch slide that really breaks it down by the numbers. Greg, if you could speak to these stats.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, some compelling stuff here. And those of you that have been following these numbers over the years, I mean, you can see that holiday shopping has gone through a significant amount of transformation and continues to do so. So with 78% of 2022's peak traffic taking place on a mobile device, for instance. That's that's a significant share out of and then out of the 17.2 billion online Black Friday retail sales, we can see that omnichannel, we're not turning back from multi-channel omnichannel. And then we can also see how the shopping time frame is stretched. So it's not just Black Friday. It's we look at $211.7 billion being spent from November to December, 17.2 billion of that on online Black Friday sales alone, but a lot of that 211.7 billion is being spread out throughout the season. So we can see that shift in behavior, and these numbers continue to grow. Retail Dive just came out with some predictions that these numbers are probably going to increase at least 10 to 13% this year in 2023.
Yeah, that's huge. And I mean, we're looking at these numbers in reference to Black Friday, because obviously Black Friday is the key moment in time that's right around the corner. But ultimately what this says is that Black Friday isn't really just a singular moment in time anymore. The shopping season spans months and months and months, and companies are already making the most out of this by re-optimizing their marketing tooling and making sure that they're engaging customers beyond just that one day, but for several months at a time.
Yeah.
Greg, I'd love to ask you a few questions along the way, and we'll kind of structure this as a fireside chat between us, because I know that your expertise is going to give our attendees so much insight. But where do you think companies today fall short when designing their digital customer experiences?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's a few things, and in some cases, some organizations may be guilty of all of these. But one thing is just to start just a rigid way of thinking. So, you mentioned these monolithic platforms, and, some of the organizations that I work with, those Fortune 500s, they don't just have one monolithic platform. They've got several. And even throughout the organization, they may have two versions of the same platform. So, we have these multiple monolithic platforms, and it starts, in addition to having siloed teams and department, that could be product teams, it could be channel teams. And so you've got monolithic platforms married with siloed teams, everyone just kind of thinking in their own little realm. And so, one of the things, and we'll get to this more, but, one of the things I love about Composable is just the flexibility, not only from a technology standpoint, but that it allows teams to work more flexibly together. So that's one thing. I think another big factor is just a lack of experimentation. And so, that can be a scary word to a lot of organizations that are worried about turning off a customer and doing the wrong thing. And, my advice to these organizations is, yes, there are certain things that are the wrong thing to do. And I think some of those are probably pretty obvious, but you run the risk of doing nothing or not enough if you're not experimenting. So, having platforms, having teams, having mindsets to continually experiment. And along with that, what do we experiment with? We experiment with personalization, recommendations, using whether it's purchase behavior, on-site app, in-store behavior, even using some of these behavioral and contextual things to be able to do personalization well, to make customers understand that we know them and we understand them, and we can offer something that they really want. And then last thing that I would say is thinking about just in addition to customers' desire to have personalization, they're also on several devices, sometimes during the same purchase cycle. So they're on their phone in a store and then go home and make the purchase. That's only 3 devices. I think on average, it's something like 5 to 6 different devices are used in big purchases these days out of potential, 15 or 16 potential channels. And so I don't think enough brands are really thinking about what does it look like when I switch from my mobile app to the website? What is the consistency of experience there? If I was looking at a product, how hard is it going to be for me to find that from one device to another. So, just a few things.
Yeah, definitely. You touched on a lot of these key drivers already in that last answer, but I was going to point out that these are some of the main key drivers that we see in terms of why businesses today are looking for a composable commerce solution. And it sounds like all 5 of these ring true to what you've seen as you've worked with companies. Would you say that's correct?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Do you want me to? I can go through each in a little more
Sure.
detail if
Yeah.
you like.
Let's touch on these
Yeah,
quickly. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I think I touched a bit on customer expectations, so maybe I'll spend a little less time on that. I mean, again, the expectation is I'm gonna get what I want, where, when, how, and why I want it, and so that's personalization, that's omnichannel, that's a lot of those things that I mentioned. Competitive pressures, I think this one I didn't touch on as much, so a little more detail here. Customers have more choice than ever before. I think we all probably know that, but it's so easy to switch, and there are some things that this move to a subscription model in a lot of cases, it's very beneficial to recurring revenue and to make it easy to switch to a brand and a product or service, but it also makes it easy to switch away from. And so we see this, it's a double-edged sword, in other words, of, as long as we can keep those customers happy and loyal, that's a great thing, but we have to continually up our game because those competitive pressures are not going away, and competition is coming from every angle, from small competitors, from larger competitors. So definitely a lot to keep focused on there. Technological advancements, I mean, there's all kinds of things. It wouldn't be 2023 if I didn't mention AI being a major thing going on here. There's lots of different types of AI, just quickly, like generative AI, huge. I'm seeing some really interesting stuff in the e-commerce space and being able to generate personalized imagery, content, product descriptions, all of those kinds of things, not only based on the products, the stock product literature and all that, but also based on my behavior and my experiences as a customer. There's also predictive analytics, another kind of AI that is able to predict and determine what is my next best action as a customer. Cost efficiency, the cost cutting and efficiency and all optimization, that's never not going to be a priority to any organization, especially low margin businesses. So that's certainly a factor here. And when we get into how do we optimize, how do we do a little bit better than yesterday with experimentation, how do we do a little bit better than our competitors, how do we understand what our customers are doing and target the right customers. This can also come into a return on ad spend. So how do we get the right customers in the door in the first place? And let's not target the customers that are not likely to purchase. Let's use our ad dollars wisely and then personalize all along the way and close the deal. And then, finally, the time to market. I mean, these, again, monolithic systems, legacy, lots of technical debt in some of these larger legacy infrastructures. Organizations need to be able to move quickly. They need to be able to not only allow marketing experimentation, but also from a technology and an integration standpoint, they need to be able to move new features and functionality in and out as needed and be able to understand what's going to work. And that cannot take 3 months. We're almost at Black Friday here. I can't believe it's almost October. So, time is of the essence, and to be able to switch and to learn and optimize right up until peak time is critical.
Absolutely. Well, and customer demands are changing so quickly, and your technology has to be able to move just as fast. We've talked a little bit about those customer expectations already, but can you double click a little bit more on what do today's customers expect when it comes to the digital experience? Is it about the checkout? Is it about the discovery experience? What does that look like for businesses?
Yeah, I mean, I think broadly speaking, it's how is a brand anticipating my needs as a customer? And that spans the entire process. It's how do I find the right thing, not only quickly, but how do I find the right thing out of my specific needs? And, that could be contextual, could be demographic. It could be behavioral based on what I've looked at or purchased before. So really anticipating needs and then providing the right thing at the right time, as well as on the right channel. I like getting emails about certain things and SMS about other things, and I really don't like it when it's flipped the wrong way. But I expect a brand to be able to learn that about me. Maybe not the first time, but the second, third time, they need to understand that about me. And I'm certainly not alone. And so understanding the right time to send something as well as the right channel. Another thing here is this idea of, I often use the example of, what we don't want is that experience when we call up our bank and we have to say our account number 10 times and explain what the problem is, why we're calling 10 different times. When you're purchasing, you expect seamless delivery and, near instantaneous on all of these things. And so if you just lodged a complaint with customer service at the same time, you don't want to be sent advertising and marketing of like, hey, you just bought this thing, you're super unhappy with it, why don't you buy this other thing really similar from the same brand? Understand your customers. Like, they may buy from you like tomorrow, just like give them a little, give them a little breathing room here, because and you have, as an organization, you have all that information. It's a matter of having the tools and the platforms to be able to tie all of those things together easily without 6 months of data discovery and requests and all these kinds of things. It's that speed to delivery.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what you're kind of starting to get at too is a linear customer relationship too. You're continuing the conversation each time with every step that you have, informed by data, informed by your analytics and AI, to really have that connected customer experience. I always like the example of like, whenever you get like a abandoned cart email, after you've already checked out from maybe a different browser, and you're thinking like, how annoying, I just gave them my business, like stop bothering me.
Right.
So those like really connected experiences become so much more important, especially in these high traffic moments.
Absolutely.
Here we get into some of those core themes driving growth. So we've already talked a lot about customer experience. I think another big core theme here is the omnichannel integration, making sure that companies are able to enable customers to research and purchase and return easily and check out easily, or buy online or pick up curbside, whatever that customer needs for their experience, making that as easy as possible, starting from the digital experience. And then really leveraging data in this. I think this is another core theme, because customer behaviors should ultimately dictate everything that a business does when it comes to mapping out their e-commerce journey. And current technologies make this ultimately really difficult. We'll get into, I love this question, but how do you think managing high traffic moments really impacts a company's long-term success? There's obviously the theme of loyalty and customer retention, but like, what are some of the other things that companies stand to gain by going this route?
Yeah, I mean, customers remember good experiences, but they also remember bad experiences. And so, I think it's not so simple as you get one shot with each customer. Sometimes that's the case. I mean, if you really mess up, I think, maybe you lose the customer. But, I think it's about, empathy is an interesting word to use when we're talking about highly automated, highly personalized things. But, to try to understand what the customer may be going through, they're trying to solve a challenge, right? They're not, they're buying a product, they want to check out, they have limited time, they have a lot of choices. So, understanding that a customer has, they want to get on with their life, probably. They don't want to spend all day shopping. They need to solve that challenge. And understanding that from a number of different angles. If they have a bad experience, following up, and instead of giving them a customer survey to say, how happy were you with your purchase, give them a different type of way of providing feedback and things like that. If they have a good experience, don't, keep that in mind too. Don't just try to hit them up for more, for more purchases, but, use a little bit of empathy in the approach so you can build that long-term relationship. And I think, you mentioned it earlier, that linear relationship, it is important to think of it as a relationship. And if you build a strong enough one, again, you can mess up once in a while, and it's okay, because there's a relationship there to go back to, and there's some loyalty there to fall back. There's a memory of the good as well as, potentially the bad.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. We'll go through some of the key benefits and like the long-term impacts. And of course, we've touched on some of this, but ultimately, when you employ a composable commerce solution, managing these high impact moments just becomes easier. We have the scalability factor. You're able to ensure consistent performance across your event pages and across your product pages. You have the flexibility to adapt to changing business needs and customer preferences over time. So it's not just about that one moment of Black Friday or Cyber Monday or Giving Tuesday or whatever it may be that's important to your organization. It's the whole season. It's every interaction that that person will have with your brand. Then there's the cost efficiency factor. It's so critical for companies today to optimize spending and avoid costly platform redevelopments. The beauty of a composable commerce solution is that you're not constantly having to replace technology. Instead, you get to build onto it. It's modular in nature. Instead of having to swap anything, you get to simply add to your stack to make sure that it's continuing to work for you and your organization and whatever goals you might have. Innovation plays a huge piece of this. We've talked a little bit about customer experience and the personalization factor. Having the ability to continue to delight your customers with new levels of personalization is going to be huge for your customer loyalty and retention. And that also goes into the improved overall customer experience, enhancing that customer satisfaction and leading to that sustained revenue and growth. What would you add to this, Greg?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a good list, and I think the the measurement and the continuously improving of all of this really is just a key thing to keep in mind.
Yeah, absolutely. Greg, I know that you helped us come up with some of the like key benefits that you've seen when brands take on this approach. Do you want to walk us through these?
Yeah, of course. Yeah, I think first, as I've mentioned already, this omni-channel approach, it's not going anywhere. Consumers are not going to use less channels during the buying process. If anything, they're going to use more, or maybe they'll use new ones. And so omni-channel is here to stay. One of the things that I love about a composable approach is the idea of, you go to some of these e-commerce sites and they all look the same, and you feel like, how is a brand differentiating itself? If a brand puts so much effort into their marketing and their brand in general, and then their e-commerce experience is generic, and it doesn't feel unique, and it doesn't speak to me as the consumer. This differentiation and is key in this, I call sea of sameness. Getting the best in class features as well, and so kind of similar to the e-commerce experience, looking and kind of feeling the same and this generic way, is also a lot of monolithic systems are limited in the features. They have what they have, and certainly they've got a shopping cart and you can check out, and they've got the features they have. But what if you could integrate the absolute best features, whether that's searching for products, whether that's generating, generative AI imagery, whatever the case may be. What if you could have all of that and have a best-in-class e-commerce experience? That's some of the things that Composable allows. Additionally, speed, just not only speed from a customer experience standpoint, but speed to market, as to roll out those features, as I was talking about earlier. Being able to just deliver those experiences, but also deliver new experiences and roll those out in record time is just so key.
Absolutely. 100% to all of that. I know you and I put together some great customer story examples that we can share with everybody as what this looks like in practice.
Yeah, and so I'll take the first one here, and I mean I love this one. This is I got to roll up my sleeves here, and um, really enjoyed working on this. So a global consumer electronics company, um, in that transition, like many other companies, in a transition to adopting at least a partial subscription-based model, was also looking at a few different things. So, monolithic platforms, certainly as any Fortune 500 company, there's a few of those sitting around. Siloed teams, multinational. So we're looking at a lot of different country language combinations that information needs to be sent to, different customer data platforms and sources. And so the goal here was, how do we centralize content so that we can create content in a place where it can be distributed to multiple channels? So not just a website experience, but a website, a mobile app, even email, as well as other potential platforms in the future. So how do we centralize that content there? How do we do that in a way that we can also make it multilingual, that it is data and privacy compliant? Because if we're talking about multiple countries, we're also talking about different consumer data privacy regulations throughout the world. And so how do we do this in a centralized way that content is in one place, the taxonomy in which we label and describe all this content is also in one place, which for those of you dealing with multi-touch attribution and just attribution in general means we can track from the first piece of content that someone sees to the last piece of content that they just saw. We can see that stage of the customer journey, content piece by content piece, what actually translated into a conversion. Super exciting stuff, and it translates into all kinds of other things like advanced personalization, journey orchestration, and more. So I could probably talk about that one all day, but I'll hand it to you for the next one.
Yes, awesome. I love that. And that's like subscription engine in action. That's a great example. Thank you, Greg. A couple of examples from the Contentstack side of the world. We worked with an outdoor retailer that was known for their iconic in-store experience. And what made it so special was that customers could essentially come into the store and get a very highly personalized interaction that would help them discover the best products for their specific needs. They could ask questions, they could get recommendations, they could test drive products. You can't really do that online. So they employed a composable commerce stack and integrated a lot of their existing tooling to essentially replicate their in-store experience online. And as a result of this, they were actually able to really maximize those peak commerce moments for themselves and make that more available to a much wider scale of buyers. So that was one great example that I personally love. Another one, we worked with a global toy retailer who had 236 global brands. And they were really struggling with the discovery factor of some of their brands. And they employed composable commerce to essentially build a one-stop shop across all 236 brands that would serve as a discovery hub for users to be able to come and start from a central place to essentially figure out what else did they need to buy? What else might they not even know that they need yet? And then using data and customer behavior to essentially build on that customer experience, make product suggestions, customize that and personalize that based on login information, really tailoring that to each individual user. So as you can see, so many different use cases for composable commerce, depending on whatever the business need might be there. Greg, I'd love to ask, based on the companies that you've worked with, what are some of the non-negotiables for businesses looking to implement a composable commerce solution?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we've talked a lot from the customer standpoint. So I think that it's good to look at this from inside the organization. And this is where I work. And I would say there's four things here, and I can talk about each briefly. But it's speed, it's security, it's flexibility, and it's extensibility. And so, from a speed standpoint, I talked about speed to market, but it's also just speed of delivery of the experiences themselves. And so, it's got to be fast for so many reasons, not only customer expectations, but even, Google rankings and things like that. So, that is it's a non-negotiable, it's a table stakes kind of thing. And, this is where Composable really delivers. Security, this is another non-negotiable. It's got to be secure. And, this is one of those areas where the best of breed, like integrating the best of breed platforms and technologies and the most secure platforms and features is certainly a possibility here, rather than being reliant on a single monolithic platform that, it may be secure, but with Composable, you are getting the absolute best security in every single aspect. From a flexibility standpoint, you want to be able to swap in components in and out, really, and to be able to say, okay, we're using this method of sending emails, let's just say today, but we may want to switch that out in a year or two when a contract runs out or when something better comes along. And instead of being beholden to this monolithic stack of, well, you can send emails with any platform you want as long as it's this one in this monolithic stack, that doesn't give you a lot of flexibility. And so that's a non-negotiable when businesses are trying to deliver the absolute best experience, the most personalization, and get the most secure outcomes. And then finally, extensibility, kind of building on flexibility, is building on and adding to in the future. We don't know what's to come. I mean, maybe we'll all be in the metaverse in 5 years buying stuff, and maybe not, but like maybe. And so, do we want that extensibility to be able to add new features, and maybe to make it a little more practical and immediate is some of these AI functionalities that are here today and really interesting, and even ones that are coming down the pike. We want the ability to be able to add those things on and not be beholden to one company's product roadmap in order to do that. We want the extensibility and the flexibility to be able to add and use the right ones at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think when we always talk to companies who are brand new to composable commerce, we always say, like, in the spirit of walk before you run, start with where you are now, essentially, instead of having to like reinvent your entire tech stack and then like build onto it over time. So that flexibility really does become super critical. And all the other factors, security that you touched on, those are especially important for companies today. A few key considerations before companies were to go this route. So we tell companies, keep in mind your goals. What kind of shopping experience are you looking to deliver online? Think about, will your team be able to run even faster and with ease? Will this hinder your team's ability to run fast for whatever reason? Hopefully it doesn't. Of course, implementation correctly is a huge piece of that factor, and making sure that you have all the pieces in place that you need to actually run fast and innovate quickly. Agility. You have to think, will a composable commerce solution enable your team to actually move quicker? And then thinking about, how will this technology help your brand adapt to your customers' evolving needs? What are those needs, and what are the tools that you're currently using today to solve for those? And what are the tools that you might need to add to your stack down the road to continue to meet those customer needs? And then lastly, thinking about the ROI, top of mind for every main business decision maker. How much is this all going to cost? And thinking about, what is the impact on the revenue? Is there anything you would add to this list, Greg?
No, I think, good. That's a good list. Yeah, nothing to add to that.
Awesome. Well, on that note, I will pass it back to Jared to open it up to some Q&A.
All right. Thank you so much. That was fantastic. Let's get into some Q&A. Up first, got a question here. Does going composable require a full rip and replace of existing technologies?
Awesome. I can start with this one. The short answer is no. Like we've been talking about today, composable technology is modular by nature. So it really does allow you to plug and play with all the pieces that you need to make your business work for you. Some of the analogies that we like to use are either like playing with Legos. If you were to get a box of Legos and dump them all out on the ground, you want to be able to configure them into whatever you want to build necessarily. If you dumped out your box of Legos and they were all stuck in like one giant brick, you wouldn't be very happy. That is the perfect example of a monolithic, inflexible solution, whereas the composable route is something that you can really configure over and over again based on the needs of your business and the needs of your audience and customers. So no, it does not require a full rip and replace. And in fact, it actually works much better when you already have a starter stack of tools to integrate it with. We've worked with a lot of customers who, for example, use Shopify as their storefront management system, or maybe they're on AWS. With a composable commerce stack, you can seamlessly integrate with the tools you already use and rely on. And that way, it's not this like totally foreign, scary thing of like, what do we do with this brand new technology? Instead, it's supposed to simplify and streamline and scale your business.
Yeah, and just to add to that, I mean, I think it's just from a mindset standpoint, even, and I think it makes sense to do it slowly anyway, just because you don't want to change things, you don't want to change too much at a time, not just from your customer perspective, but think about your internal teams as well. They're having to learn new platforms to to manage things and add and edit content and things like that. And so changing everything all at once, not only, again, that's bad from a customer standpoint. Sometimes if everything all of a sudden looks different one day from the next, they're used to one thing. But also, think about your internal teams and just making incremental changes. You can really see where some of the big impacts are when you make those changes.
Great call out, Greg.
Excellent. Thank you both so much. Another question up. How do you evaluate what's working and whether your investment in your customer experience tooling is paying off?
I'll let Greg take this one.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think it starts with you've got to define the measurements before you start. So I wouldn't say it's too late, but it's pretty late if you do it after the fact. And so, when I'm working with organizations to design systems or to design changes to systems, that's the first question we ask is, and some of this comes from I've got the Lean Six Sigma background and stuff too, is like, let's define the experiment before we run the experiment, right? And so defining that, what does success look like? And then we build and we determine, and we can really, we're not settling for, good enough at that point, because we've already defined what success looks like. So, step by step and measuring all along the way. And, in addition to defining the test, it's building in the measurements all along the way. And again, this is where having the flexibility of a composable system where you can integrate measurements and experimentation a lot more easily than what you might just get out of the box and not be able to modify as easily. It makes that part a lot easier as well.
Absolutely. To echo a lot of that too, I think for any business looking to go this route, it's important to have a North Star. And Greg, you touched on this a little bit, but we talked about 3 great customer examples of businesses who have implemented a composable commerce stack. You've got the use case of setting up a subscription-based product. You've got the use case of boosting your organic searchability and deliverability and discoverability for that matter. And then you've got the use case of consolidating brands or just replicating an already established experience and bringing that online to deliver something highly personalized. All of these are examples of having that North Star in mind before you even start. So I think that's another huge piece of this is it's good to have an idea of like, what are you trying to deliver to your customers that you can't currently deliver on today? And how can a composable stack really help you do that? What are the pieces that you'll be able to mix and match to achieve what you're trying to deliver to your customers?
Gotcha. And this next question kind of touches on that and what you're speaking on a little bit earlier. How can businesses approach composable commerce without seeming like a one-size-fits-all solution?
Yeah. The beauty of it is really that it's not one-size-fits-all. I think there are so many different ways to configure this. I used my Lego analogy earlier. There's also such thing as like the pizza analogy or the perfume analogy, as if you're kind of concocting something that's just for you. There is no one size fits all. It really is tailored to your specific business needs. And I know that in our case at Contentstack, we have our marketplace of partners and technology solutions, which you can leverage with turnkey applications and extensions to really make this work for you. And then, like we've already talked about earlier, you can also take the tools that you already use and rely on, so it's not super foreign to your internal teams, and it's not this massive learning curve of like, what do we do with this new technology? Especially during peak moments. You don't want to add to the stress of an already extremely busy time by adding new technology on top of that. So the beauty of it is that it's not one size fits all. It is entirely modular, and you can go as fast or as slow as you need to implement the tools you need for your specific business needs.
Yeah, and that's, it's, as you're saying, that's a benefit for the internal teams that need to manage, and it's also a benefit for the customers, right? You need your e-commerce experience to feel like your brand, not just like you redirected them to some generic e-commerce site or something like that. And so therefore, it's that win-win of, internal teams are happy because they're not having to change everything all at once and mitigating risk in that way, but also your end customers are able to have the very best. If you have very specific needs on, let's say, product search and discovery, you can feed the very best tool for your brand and for your needs you can leave some of the rest maybe be and for the time being. But if you know that search is really a key either opportunity or pain point, you can feed that in and focus on that, and then leave the rest to another time that's maybe non-peak and less risky and things like that.
Sure.
Absolutely. And
speaking of peak days, as the end of the year is coming fast, what are some ways that we can stress test infrastructure ahead of these coming peak days?
Sure. I won't claim that I'm an expert on this side of things. I work with some really amazing teams that are tasked with doing all of these things. But I would say that, some of this goes back to defining the use cases beforehand. And that is something that marketing teams and CX teams and e-commerce teams are going to know and understand. They're going to know the promotions that they're doing. They're going to know when some of those peak times are going to be. Some of it may be obvious if there's a big sale at a specific time, of course, but being able to define those tests ahead of time means that we can start putting some information together and give those teams that are testing a little more information to do their work better.
Yeah. And I would kind of answer this in two ways. There's the experimentation factor that Greg talked about earlier. The beauty of having a composable commerce stack is that you really do get to A/B test as much as you need to ahead of these peak moments in time. So really getting the most out of that in advance is a very critical piece of this. And then additionally, like to echo what Greg said, I think thinking of the use case or like the problem that you're trying to solve. If last year your site crashed during Black Friday, or if you've seen customer complaints about your checkout experience, or if you feel like your products are not super discoverable, it's kind of a matter of working backwards from that problem and using turnkey solutions and integrations to say, how do we fix this, and beginning to test those out. And because of the modular nature composable stack, you get to use components as you see fit. You can try some. If those don't work, you can switch them out for something else. You can plug and play. You can kind of play around with it until you figure out the right recipe for you. So that is the beauty of this, is that you're not stuck with technology by any means the way that you would be with a monolithic solution. You're not locked into anything. You truly get to experiment and stress test and really work backwards from the problems that you're trying to solve for your customers.
Fantastic. I think that's actually going to be the last question we take. That's going to be our time for today. Greg, Marina, thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to the Contentstack team for sponsoring today's webinar. And last but not least, thanks to all of you in the audience for your time and attention today. Today's webinar has been recorded, and you'll be receiving a link and a follow-up email. So keep an eye on your inbox for that. In the meantime, thank you all once more, and we will see you on the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you.